Number 10. Batman. Ooh, one of my favorite heroes out there, especially right now. Despite Batman claiming to always be so in control, even he has his limits. We've seen countless realities and Elseworlds where Batman completely loses control and even becomes some of the most powerful and unstoppable villains we've ever seen in DC's history. And we got a lot of unstoppable villains. But when it comes to Batman, one of the biggest villains I can think of for him is Batman Who Laughs. Batman is a villain who loves to prepare for any potential crisis, but often it is this obsession that ends up being his downfall. And even in the main continuity, there are a few times that Bruce has teetered near the edge of losing it. Also in the Batman Telltale game, granted at least that loss of control, well, it wasn't really his fault. Number 9. Cersei. Cersei is a member of the Eternals, who admittedly have all flown off the handle before at some point. But in Cersei's case, this has happened more than once. Cersei at one point suffered from an eternal illness known as Mad Worry. Mad Worry? Mad Worry? That sounds weird, but I'm just gonna assume I'm saying it right. Which appeared to make her more aggressive, even pushing her to at times kill her opponents. Her change in demeanor was also denoted in the comics via a change in costume. I love a good costume change, with her wearing a bright red number in place of her more common green superhero attire. I mean, I feel like red or green, either way you do it, I love both those colors personally. In order to help cure Cersei, who refused to acknowledge her illness and initially resisted the help of her friends, they decided to place her in Gan Josin with the Black Knight, forging a soul bond between the two, which would go on to basically cause a series of other awkward problems, as Black Knight and Crystal were more in love at the time than Black Knight and Cersei. And later on, there would end up being an alternate version of Dane Whitman, aka Black Knight, hell-bent on killing every version of Cersei across the multiverse. But hey, that's a story for another time. And all you nerds out there, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. The Flash. In the comics, Barry has lost it a few times, usually as a result of Eobard Thawne, Professor Zoom, manipulating him. One of the earliest examples of this in Barry's history was when Thawne attempted to do harm to Barry's fiancée on the day of their wedding. This also happened after Thawne had already killed Iris West, who is Barry's one true love. Fearing for his fiancée Fiona's life and not willing to lose another romantic partner again, can't blame him, after what happened to Iris, Barry shouted, "Not again!" and snapped Thawne's neck. As a result of this excessive use of force, Barry actually ended up losing his fiancée Fiona anyways and was put on trial. It all worked out in the end though, as he managed to escape to the future where Iris was waiting for him. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, I thought you said Iris was dead, so how could she be alive in the future? Well, this is the Flash, so time travel and such, and I don't know, maybe clones, it is comics. Look, it doesn't matter anyways because this happy ending also was interrupted shortly thereafter by Crisis. All of our happy endings got interrupted by Crisis. Woo! Number 7. Storm. Now granted, this one wasn't really Storm's fault, or her intention, but was more something that happened as a result of people preying on Storm's intense claustrophobia, or at least her past claustrophobia, as I think Storm actually managed to move past those fears in recent years, and she no longer really is affected by them in the same way. However, at that time, Storm was severely claustrophobic, so when she ended up being encased in a sort of skin-tight chrome casing, she lost it. I mean, I would lose it too if someone put me in a chrome casing. Doesn't sound very comfortable. Storm appeared to threaten the world over with a massive storm while under duress. The X-Men managed to eventually get through to her and calm her down, which was fortunate as her power levels at the time were compared to the Phoenix. That's how scary Storm losing it can be. That's how scary Storm can be in general. Not a hero you want to push past the brink or, you know, piss off. Just respect Storm. I think that's fair. I think we can all respect Storm, yeah? Number 6. The Flash. Again, but the other Flash. You know what I mean. Wally West is known for being one of the most powerful heroes out there as the Flash. Honestly, I have always felt that super speed is right up there with one of the best power sets. I would agree with Amanda on that. He's also known for being one of the best heroes out there when it comes to his capacity for goodness. All around, Wally is just a lovable dude, but that doesn't mean that he is immune to the pressures sometimes inflicted upon our favorite heroes. Wally himself experienced a loss loss of control over his speed powers and his emotions during his time at Sanctuary. Basically a safe haven for heroes to go and talk about their feelings. Basically allowing them to do therapy in a safe environment. But it wasn't really open to villains, unfortunately. I thought it was pretty unfortunate anyways. I feel like I should be included, you know, I'm moving towards being a hero, right? Wally's paranoia, mainly caused by the reset of the New 52 continuity as he remembered the previous one, New Earth, resulted in him rifling through the files at the Sanctuary. Now this overloaded his mind with intense emotions and basically resulted in him losing control, killing tons of heroes who were present at the time accidentally. Wally attempted to make things right while initially hiding what he'd done, making Booster Gold and myself, Harley Quinn, seem like the likely suspects. But it wasn't us, we didn't do it. But eventually, Wally would also come clean. And this also all went down in Heroes in Crisis. So many crises. We really love our crises over at DC, don't we? Number 5. Scarlet Witch. Poor Wanda. Like many heroes on our list here, her loss of control wasn't really all her fault. Wanda for years had issues with feeling unworthy of love, leaving her feeling undervalued and resulting in her constantly ending up in questionable romances and doing her best to please everyone around her. So when her so-called friends lashed out when Wanda created her and Vision's children, kinda warping reality to have and keep them, it pushed her past her breaking point. When Wanda had discovered that her children were taken from her, she became unstable and eventually she kinda snapped, resulting in the events of House of M. And even there, once again, she was trying to not just give herself a perfect world, but also give all of her friends, family, and her colleagues theirs too. And even then, it still wasn't enough. Now look, I'm not saying that she was completely justified in her actions, just that it's understandable that all this unresolved trauma resulted in M-Day when you consider how powerful the Scarlet Witch is. Unresolved trauma is a huge problem, especially in comic books. If you have some unresolved trauma, it's definitely gonna mess you up. Number 4. Sentry. Sentry is a hero who is known for being one of the most powerful and yet one of the most unstable around. He basically was losing it from pretty much day one. While Robert Reynolds invented a story where he was a voluntary test subject who was chosen to receive the Golden Sentry Serum, in reality he was a drug addict looking for a fix who stumbled upon it while breaking into a lab one night. At this point he was already struggling mentally, and so when he became the Sentry, he also became the Void, with his heroic persona also suffering from his dissociative identity disorder. It was also implied that Mastermind made this worse or potentially unleashed this whole thing, but the reality is Robert Reynolds had struggled since the beginning, so it's more likely that Mastermind simply made things just even worse when it came to Bob's dissociative identity disorder, his DID. While the Sentry is supposed to be one of the greatest and most powerful heroes ever in Marvel Comics, the Void is supposed to be just the opposite, one of the worst and most deadly villains to have ever existed. Number 3. Superman. In Injustice, Superman completely snapped when he was faced with the fact that he'd killed Lois Lane and their unborn child together. Now this was not his fault, mind you, as he was being manipulated into thinking that Lois was Doomsday, so he lost it. He killed Joker and decided that the world needed a more severe kind of justice. A justice that would not allow any crime to continue, even if it meant taking control of the entire world in order to do so. Which was pretty much what Supes did, along with his own loyal version of the Justice League, of course. This did create a big split amongst those heroes, as some felt Superman was in the right, while others thought taking people's freedoms away, no matter the reason, was never really worth it. And I kinda gotta agree with those other heroes. Number 2. Raven. I mean, Raven has to work constantly to keep herself from losing control of her powers and herself. Raven's emotions can cause her to completely lose control and turn to the dark side, both when it comes to her powers and her own inner self. One of my favorite points to come back to for levels of evilness and losing it for Raven is the Nightwing and Starfire New Titans wedding issue, issue number 100, for those interested in checking that out. Not only does evil Raven crash Dick and Corey's wedding and threaten Starfire, which is already a lot, I gotta admit, but she also sets up just how awful this is going to go right from the start when she arrives and immediately incinerates the priest. Yikes. Talk about an entrance. It's actually impressive to me that after the number of times Raven has turned super duper evil, she still manages to return to the side of heroism time and time again, and find a level of forgiveness from her peers. I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of bad stuff, but I don't know if I have anything on Raven. I know it's not really her fault most times, but she's done a lot of really bad things. Number 1. Phoenix. Jean Grey has lost control on a few occasions, but one of the most memorable is likely when she went from Phoenix to Dark Phoenix. Now, of course, in retrospect, this wasn't really Jean, but more an imprint and kind of adopted version of her used by the Phoenix Force. But still, it was made from Jean and likely represents what Jean would have done in that same position. So we can still kinda call it Jean. Comics are confusing. Phoenix ended up losing herself to the dark side after her interaction with the Hellfire Club. Interactions there caused Phoenix to snap, breaking through any mental barriers that were still holding on in her brain and causing her to give into her dark side as the power overwhelmed her. One of the first actions was to make Mastermind lose his own mind when she allowed him to see just how much power she was dealing with on a psionic level, giving him a little taste of what she experienced and the information that she had instant access to, which overwhelmed him, rendering him catatonic. From there, it only got a lot more crazy, and it would end up with Dark Phoenix destroying a star and the surrounding planets, one of which was inhabited by, well, millions of people.
And it 10 Psylocke. During the follow-up to the original Contest of Champions story, a seemingly peaceful group of aliens invited the heroes to battle each other and showcase their abilities, with the reward being new tech for all of Earth. In reality though, this was the plan all by the Brood to drain the powers of Earth's greatest champions and then pump them into Rogue, who at the time was carrying the Brood's queen's consciousness. In this competition though, Iron Man was put up against Psylocke. Luckily, Iron Man had built some dampeners into his suit in an effort to limit psychic attacks. However, Psylocke was still able to create the illusion that she was Lady Mandarin once more, and she got the upper hand on Tony for a hot minute before eating it and then getting destroyed by the gold titanium alloy man. And at 9, Falcon. Falcon is an excellent flyer, and in Captain America's third MCU title movie he is shown as quite the pro pilot, dodging and being able to keep pace with both Iron Man and War Machine, even breaking away a few times, once with the aid of Hawkeye and Ant-Man. However, when the chips are down and we're on the ground, Iron Man certainly has the upper hand, as he demonstrated in the brief moments when Falcon dodged Vision's beam and caused it to hit Rhodey's arc reactor, causing him to plummet hundreds of feet and screw up his legs. And you know, since they're still the good guys, Falcon goes up to check on Rhodey and see if he's okay, but Tony blasts him and knocks him to the ground with one single blast. I have to be honest, it counts, but it's still funny as hell. I love that scene. And at 8, Brother Voodoo. Jericho returned to his native Port-au-Prince, Haiti after 12 years of education and practice in the United States. His brother Daniel though was dying from the spell of a rival Bokor who claimed he served the evil serpent god Damballa. After only a few weeks, Jericho had reached a proficiency in voodoo even greater than his brothers though. To further increase his power, Papa Jambo performed a rite that summoned Daniel Drum's spirit back from the dead and joined it with Jericho's own. And in the Axis storyline, Brother Voodoo used this power to possess Scarlet Witch, who Iron Man then had to fight off. Brother Voodoo, possessing Wanda along with a good Doctor Doom and Red Skull, worked to reverse the spell that caused Axis, but Iron Man escaped its effects by throwing up a last-minute telepathic shield, protecting himself from its reversal. I think that it's weird, like having a good version of Doctor Doom, though. I mean, Doom is literally in his name, but okay. Iron Man still technically won then, just saying. And in 7, Magneto. Yes, at the time of the battle of Iron Man and Magneto, Magneto was on the up and up, and as far as I'm aware, currently is. During Avengers vs. X-Men number 2 from 2012, the Avengers engaged the X-Men on their island home Utopia to get their hands on Hope and stop the coming threat of the Phoenix. This issue, among other interwoven ones, showed various Avengers facing off against mutants like Cyclops and Emma Frost, and Magneto and Iron Man going toe-to-toe. Which seems to be absolutely easy cheese given Magneto's control over metal, but Tony knew about this and had a suit composed of carbon fiber tubes, as well as studying magnetism in his free time, because why not? So in a moment of distraction when Magneto realized what the Phoenix would actually bring power-wise, Tony managed to land a final blow and knock him from the sky. I mean, sure, Magneto had a moment of distraction that allowed Tony to win, but half of the fight is staying mentally in the fight. You fight with your skill and your mind, and Magneto dropped it. And at 6, Iron Man. In the Avengers crossover known as The Crossing, Iron Man beat himself. Yeah, that's not even the crazy part though. The big hook in this storyline is that many years ago, Kang came back in time and basically brainwashed Tony Stark in the early days of the Avengers. You might ask, what? And then you might ask again, seriously, bro, are you serious? And then another question of, if Tony Stark had been under Kang's control for all these years, why didn't Kang use Tony to help him any of the times that the Avengers actually had beaten Kang? And the answer to that is, of course, we have no idea. And then there was another bad idea that was thrown into the mix. The notion that Kang only turned to Tony after Hank Pym didn't actually fall for his mental tricks, which is why Hank has mental problems. Yeah, until one faithful team member had the genius idea to go back in time to get Tony Stark before Kang had brainwashed him, and then have that Tony fight against the older Tony. Tony actually ends up nearly killing his younger self, but hey, Iron Man won against Iron Man. Even if it was inevitable that an Iron Man would win, it's good enough for this list, damn it. Halfway through into number 5, Daredevil. In the aftermath of the Axis storyline I mentioned earlier, Tony remains swamped and starts using his tech for even more personal gain than before. Yeah, he's not evil exactly, but he's certainly not above getting all of San Francisco addicted to his new gene rewriting extremist app. Daredevil, who recently relocated to the city after being barred from practicing law in New York, doesn't like this for some reason, almost as if he has a conscience. But when he first confronts Tony in his new island mansion, the armored Avenger just tosses Matt Murdock into the ocean. Just flings him right out the window. They have another fight later on that is an actual fight, but Tony ends up winning yet again. 2 issues later though, Tony actually ends up saving Daredevil from falling off a building, but then traps him in armor and wipes his memory of all the bad things that he's discovered about Tony, so I don't think he did for Matt's sake. And at 4, the Winter Soldier. Tony isn't able to get the upper hand on the Winter Soldier until he's sufficiently filled with rage of personal loss. And I mean, aren't we all? Rage is the fuel that makes the world go round. Which we actually see play out in the same movie as the fight with Falcon. After Tony learned that Bucky was actually the one responsible for his parents' car crash. I mean, I can see both sides of the coin here. Like, yeah, Bucky at the time was being controlled by Hydra, so it wasn't really him who did it, just his meat suit. But on the other hand, I wouldn't care. He killed my mommy. So yeah, I get why he went nuts. And I always find it funny that somehow Bucky always seems to end up losing his arm, at least his metal one, in some way or another. To be fair though, I don't think Tony would have blown off his arm if it wasn't metal. But like, imagine Bucky was faking having the whole metal arm thing the whole time. And it was just like a cool sleeve that he had that was hiding his real arm, and then Tony blew it off. It was like, ah! That'd be funny. I want to see that what if story. I know it would be absolutely horrific animation wise, but come on, please make it happen. Also, I'm pretty sure that they had the Disney Plus series for What If planned before Stan Lee's passing, and that they were going to reveal him as the Watcher, but couldn't, which is sad. I wish that had happened. Getting close to the end in number 3, Spider-Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man have fought almost as much as they've teamed up, with Civil War being one of the multiple times they did both. While Peter and Tony's connection during the 2005 run of New Avengers initially saw Spidey joining Team Iron Man in the conflict, which actually ended up resulting in Peter unmasking himself on live television, then coming to regret it and having some horrible future comic storylines. The wall crawler changes his tune once he learns about Tony's secret prison in the negative zone, the moral implications of which makes Peter switch sides, because you know he was imprisoning heroes who disagree with superhero registration in a different freaking yeah. Peter wins the first round despite Tony threatening to kill Aunt May and Mary Jane, but when the two meet at Yankee Stadium later on, Spider-Man gets absolutely pummeled. But don't worry, Spider-Man gives as good as he gets in other issues. Go watch the top 10 most powerful superheroes who lost to Spider-Man if you want more info on that. That's right, I'm telling you to go watch another video. But after this one, of course, you're only 2 numbers away. You only got 2 more to go. Stay. Penultimately, in at number 2, Hulk. Thanks to the versatility of Tony's suits and some help from Bruce Banner himself, Iron Man was able to take on the Hulk when Scarlet Witch sent him rampaging across South Africa in Avengers Age of Ultron, calling down Veronica, which I feel like should be a reference to the Archie comics, but I could be very wrong. The suit proved to be everything we could have hoped for as it went shot for shot with Hulk. The best scene from this fight though is when he grabs Hulk's hand and then like traps it and then just jackhammers the other fist into Hulk's face. Oh, I love that. However, this isn't the only time they fought. They also fought in Iron Man number 132 in 1980, when Hulk punched Tony into a semi-truck, tried ripping his suit open underwater while Iron Man was trying to drown him, which I feel like might have been a bit extreme there, Tony. And even ripped off a chunk of the St. Louis Arch to use as a projectile. In the end though, it took Tony loading an insane amount of energy into his armor to deliver the final blow, taking the big green meanie down. After that though, Hulk turned into Banner and then Tony's suit busted, literally falling to the ground around him. Finally, in at number 1, Sentry. Iron Man's fight with Sentry from Siege number 4 in 2010 is one of those he was being controlled by an evil thing tropes, where technically Sentry was the Void at the time, and the Void may technically be a separate entity of purely negative energy, but it often manifests inside Sentry's body and in essence has the same abilities, so it's like Tony beat Sentry. This isn't a list of heroes that Tony fought while they were on the good side, okay? It's a list of the most powerful heroes that Tony has beat, even if they weren't heroes at the time. It's good enough. During the events of Siege, Void served Norman Osborn as part of his Dark Avengers, raining destruction down on Earth and Asgard, which is definitely an issue for the world because, you know, Earth. While Thor may have been the one to deal the killing blow, though Tony was the one who had weakened Void into a state where he could be killed. So good on you, Tony. You took down basically a god and lived. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Especially because didn't Sentry tear Ares in half or something nuts like that? I remember talking about that. I feel like that was Sentry. I think Sentry tore the Marvel version of Ares in half. Or was that another person? I can't remember.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Superman. We'll kick off the list with some mind-controlled madness here. We always love those. In part 1 of the Superman sacrifice storyline, Maxwell Lord had Superman thinking he was fighting Doomsday, but in reality he was fighting his own friend, Diana Prince. Now Superman does seem to do most of the damage here, but only because Diana was strategically using her lasso against him in hopes to cancel out the mind control. She had her wrist broken during this altercation, but eventually she realized the only way to stop Superman was to take out Maxwell Lord instead. But if she had not taken down Maxwell, she for sure would have won against mind-controlled, dare I say, messy Superman. She slashed his throat at one point and was still holding back. What a ride. Number 9, Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is one of the most powerful members of the Justice League. His ring allows him to get a lot done, but how does it hold up against the might of Wonder Woman? In the New 52, the team aren't exactly close yet. They have their arguments, you know, it's realistic. They don't know each other too well, so it makes sense. But in Justice League issue 11, Wonder Woman sets out to take on David Graves. Steve Trevor is there and Diana plans on taking off Graves' head. So Green Lantern steps in with other ideas. He insists that this is a job for the League and not just for her, so she should back down, or at least include them. She says no to both options. So Green Lantern uses his ring to hold her back, and after Diana demands to be let out, he responds with no. So she breaks out of the ring's construct and throws Green Lantern around for a few pages. She actually tries to use her sword on him at one point, believe it or not, but luckily Superman grabbed it mid-swing. That was a close call, Diana, a little too close for comfort. And before we continue with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us out here on our channel, and then in turn we can bring you all the nerdy goodness and put it back into your eyes. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 8, Power Girl. In Wonder Woman issue 41, A Murder of Crows Part 2, we see Power Girl and Wonder Woman go toe-to-toe. This nightmare becomes reality when the son of Ares, the Crows, turns superheroes against Wonder Woman, including Power Girl. At the start of the comic, Wonder Woman even acknowledges that this isn't going the way she thought it was. She's getting quite a few hits from Power Girl. Now, it's fun to watch. I mean, Power Girl literally punches Diana so hard that she ends up in Canada, which is amazing. Karens are tough. She's probably the toughest Karen out there. I would say so. But Wonder Woman quickly reminds herself that she too has super speed. She's good, but she's no Amazon. Number 7, Supergirl. Hell on Earth is a Superman storyline beginning with Superman Volume 3, Issue 13, and as the title suggests, Hellspawn arrives to Earth and kicks Superboy and Superman out of the Fortress of Solitude, so now they need help from the Justice League in stopping him. Hell's idea here is to go back in time and prevent the destruction of Krypton, but in order to do so, our solar system will be blown to smithereens. Nice. Hashtag not so great. Supergirl is on board with Hell's plan to, bring back Krypton, so Wonder Woman knows that she must stop her. Diana reminds her that strength is not simply about force, but rather from studying your opponent and how they fight. She continues to tell Kara that she fights like a child, wasting energy and lashing out. That's a pretty harsh burn. So Diana ties her up then with a lasso and hopes that Supergirl can learn from this. Closely matched in strength and speed, but not experience. Number 6, Batman. On screen we saw Batman and Superman go at it. It was a good time, but we have yet to see Batman fight Wonder Woman, and that's probably for the best. In Wonder Woman the Hikatia, released in 2002, during this storyline Batman gets on Diana's radar after somebody Wonder Woman was in charge of protecting turns out to be a criminal in Gotham City, so Batman has a few choice words to say. That's his city and he handles the crime around those parts. Diana disagrees, so now we get a heated exchange. Lucky for us, it's pretty epic. Batman throws a batarang and Diana catches it. It's always an entertaining dynamic when two superheroes have different plans. Now the only way for Diana to stop beating down Bruce was for Batman to tell her that she straight up won. He surrenders, which is insane. The cover of the story is actually pretty spoilery. It shows Wonder Woman's foot on Batman's head, which we don't see play out until page 93. But it's still worth the read nonetheless. Check it out. Number 5, Mera. Returning to the Flashpoint universe for a hot minute, where Wonder Woman is now an oppressive queen of the Amazons, the way she rules over them is dark. It's cruel. It's nothing like how we know and love Diana now. So naturally her combat skills share a hint of evil as well. She's one of the two main villains in the 2013 animated film Justice League The Flashpoint Paradox, and it's here where we see Diana and Aquaman fall for each other out of nowhere. Aquaman's wife, Mera, is of course hurt during this, as she witnessed this affair go down, so she approached Wonder Woman and was like, "Hey man, not so cool what happened there with you and my husband. I don't know, let's talk about it." Wonder Woman responds by taking her head clean off. Her body was then later sent to Aquaman as a gift, and then of course a massive war began. This is incredibly dark, but most things in the Flashpoint universe are. I mean, she kept and wore Mera's crown too, like, come on, really dude? Number 4, Captain Atom. In Injustice Gods Among Us issue 2, Captain Atom is keeping Superman busy. He's holding the god down by using his nuclear energy. And he's actually doing a pretty decent job here, I'm not gonna lie. The Pentagon thinks that Nathaniel can take Superman on, but he's never tried to before until now, because he knows, he follows orders, unlike some other gods. It's a heated exchange, but it comes to an explosive halt once Diana enters the scene. Right before Captain Atom is about to punch Superman's head right off, Wonder Woman uses her sword to slash at his throat. He's standing there afterwards, but everybody knows what's about to happen. He has more power in him than 10 nuclear bombs, and her magic sword just breached the one thing that contains it. So he decides to take Superman with him as he flies off and explodes in space. Number 3, Huntress. Back to the Injustice timeline yet again. Looking into year 3, issue 21, the world is far from bright. Superman is hurt, so Huntress believes that this is the perfect time to take a crack at the son of Krypton. Batwoman is also there, so the two of them perform a well choreographed cranial kick, and down he goes. They genuinely have him on the ropes here. It's looking good, but then in comes the bestie Wonder Woman. Not on her watch, oh god. Diana explains how fighting for a lost cause doesn't make you a hero, it just makes you foolish. Huntress responds with, well, we'd rather die fools than belong to a tyrant, and then Diana makes that a reality by cracking her whip around Huntress's neck and giving a mighty tug. She got Gwen Stacy'd by Wonder Woman, guys, that's brutal. She says she didn't mean to, but at that point it's far too late, doesn't matter. Number 2, the Justice League. Perhaps one of the best victories here has to be the time Diana blindfolded herself in order to take on Medusa. Yeah, you heard me. Shut your eyes for this one, folks. This one goes down in Wonder Woman Eyes of the Gorgon, beginning in Wonder Woman Volume 2, issue 206. Diana is challenged to take on Snakehead Sally over here, so at first she blindfolds herself, obviously, but when the blindfold comes off, she needs a new plan, so she improvises and uses one of the snakes from her head that had been severed off, and she uses its venom to blind herself. That's one way of not looking. She takes down Medusa blind. It's actually really impressive, but it only gets better. A couple of issues later, Diana, still blind, begins training with the Justice League. They need to know she's still a formidable member, so like the final scene of Dodgeball, she wraps up her eyes, and so it begins. Plastic Man, The Flash, Black Canary, Martian Manhunter, even Batman comes in at one point, all racing towards her, and she takes them all on. Superman even fires a gun at her, like okay, but she deflects it, no sweat, still blind. How impressive is that? And finally coming in at number 1, the Justice League again. Another one, here you go. Yeah, it's pretty common for superheroes to think about taking down their own teammates. Batman did it in Tower of Babel. He had all these plans just in case anybody on the team went a little psycho. And then in JLA, A League of One, Diana has to face a similar situation. The story begins with a flashback to 1348, where the evil dragon, Dracul Carfang, has started wiping out villages. Now the only way to destroy said dragon is of course to get to its heart. How soft and lovely. Soldiers reach the dragon's lair, fail at killing it obviously, so then they just blow the entrance apart and seal it in forever until You guessed it, today, present day. So the rules with how to defeat this dragon are complicated because it can only be taken down by members of the Justice League, but in turn, it would take them out in the process. So Diana figures out this wild loophole and takes the team down herself in order to protect them. Yeah, hear me out. She traps Martian Manhunter in a volcano, she throws Aquaman to the fishes, hilariously, he gets eaten by a sea monster, and then she beats up Batman and the Flash. She also steals Green Lantern's ring, which is just rude. She handles Superman as well by sending him away on a fake mission in space, so he's just away, not even involved. And then she handles the dragon with her lasso, almost dying in the process, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Even if that includes throwing your coworker into a sea monster's trout. What can I say? That's teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work.
And at 10, Peter Parker. With Miles having all the powers of Spider-Man with a couple extra to boot, it's bound to be expected that he would eventually surpass his idol/mentor Peter Parker. However, we expected it after some training and a lot of experience. We see this come to pass though in the pages of Spider-Man. Miles and Peter run into each other in costume and they don't know each other's identity. So Pete demands that Miles unmask himself and, state his name. However, they get into a bit of an altercation because of that. And thanks to the help of a few additions Miles made to his suit, including stingers that cause paralysis and electrified webbing, Miles does end up gaining the upper hand and knocking Peter down, which I have to say shouldn't really have been the case. Like, they should have shown us that the more experienced Spider-Man could still win, since experience is the real currency of the world, but nonetheless, it happened, so it goes on the list. And at 9, Deadpool. Deadpool is such a charismatic character that you'd think he'd pair perfectly with the quick-witted, constantly quipping Webhead. However, in one episode of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, Peter was introduced to the one and only Wade Wilson, the merc with a red leather-covered mouth. Kinky. The fight quickly turns into Peter and Wade literally slapping each other, so it's safe to say that this is bound to be interesting. However, Deadpool somehow pulls Peter into his mind, turning the fights from a fisticuffs to Deadpool hunting a Spider-Man whale with a harpoon, a la Lewis Brinley, and getting trampled with giant animals and verbal puns that caused physical harm. Deadpool is literally a bard using vicious mockery in this scene, and I don't think that anyone can fight me on that point. Straight up, this whole episode is hilarious, and the fact that Deadpool can't say the word kill just makes me think about YouTube censors. So it's relatable too. And at 8, Fantastic Four. In the Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, we get thrown right into the action with a crossover with the Fantastic Four. But not a fantastic crossover, since the group was actually in the midst of fighting Spider-Man. Spidey took on all 4 members at once, webbing them all up in a way that disabled their powers, including basically hog-tying Mr. Fantastic. The thing is, no pun intended, this fight was all Spider-Man's fault. He wanted to join the Fantastic Four, and figured the best way to convince them to let that happen was to infiltrate their base and kick their asses. However, he learns that joining the team won't actually make him any money, so he called them cheap and leaves, which I find utterly hilarious. He hit the Human Torch with a baseball bat made of web, for crying out loud. How is a 5th member supposed to join the Fantastic Four? Wouldn't it be the Fantastic Five at that point? Or is Ben getting kicked out? He can go be somebody's pet rock, right? And at 7, Iron Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man may have a father-stepson-like bond in the MCU, however, things in the comments are much more professional than that, aside from the Iron Spider storyline, I guess. There are multiple instances of Iron Man and Spider-Man fighting and Peter coming out on top, like in Amazing Spider-Man number 536, where he had some assistance from the Venom symbiote and actually exploded the Iron Man suit from the inside out. This was during the Civil War storyline where Tony believed that heroes needed to register their secret identities to be able to continue fighting. After this, however, Spidey does join Iron Man's team and reveals his identity as a result. This then leads to the One More Day storyline that some people believe to be the story No Way Home is inspired by. However, now Spidey takes on Iron Man as Peter Parker, using his organic webbing to string him up real good. There was also the Amazing Spider-Man number 588 fight where Tony shuts down the Iron Spider suit with a voice command, but Peter had built in a counter voice command and surprises Tony, managing to web him up and flee. The counter voice command, I guess, was also surprised. So that's pretty funny. And at 6, X-Men. This is certainly another interesting number, since Spider-Man had struggled against singular X-Men before, such as Nightcrawler and Wolverine. However, in the Secret Wars storyline, he took on the whole X-Men team at once and won. In Secret Wars number 3, Spider-Man was eavesdropping on the X-Men to learn their plans. When he heard meeting with Magneto among other things, he decided to drop in and say hi. I guess his body and powers just go into overdrive when he fights teams because, just like with the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man was easily able to dodge Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and more, even though he struggled one-on-one. He really wrecked them, webbing Colossus and Nightcrawler, hanging Rogue from the ceiling, and just obliterating the entire team. Even Wolverine pointed out that they were all lucky all he wanted was information and then an escape, because, quote, he really clobbered us. Halfway through into number 5, Captain America. Within the pages of Civil War II, we expected a battle much like the last Civil War, with moral alignments being similar along with a couple deaths. However, we were shocked when a battle between heroes was interrupted. This vision that took us away from the action actually ended with an image of Miles Morales holding a dead Captain America. It seemed to be that Miles had also killed him, with blood dripping out of his hand and covering his suit. Would this really come to pass though? Civil War II was based on the belief in using the visions of an inhuman known as Ulysses to prevent disasters before they occurred, and heroes that felt taking action based on these prophecies were irresponsible, which is where this vision of Miles killing Cap came from, since these visions resulted in preventing multiple tragedies but also got War Machine and Hulk killed. But we did see an explanation play out in Secret Empire number 7, when a rage-filled Spider-Man nearly beat Captain America, who was remade by Hydra using the Cosmic Cube, to death after Cap had killed Black Widow. But that's all in the past. 5 years in the past to be exact. In it for Wonder Woman. Despite Marvel and DC always being viewed as rivals, they have had multiple occasions where they've had to come together. One such time was in the Superman and Spider-Man comic, which saw the two heroes join together to take on Dr. Doom. The Hulk and Wonder Woman also made an appearance in an attempt to satisfy more fans, and so we could hope that Superman and Hulk would dish it out. However, Dr. Doom very briefly got Spider-Man and Wonder Woman to fight because he said the two were enemies. And while Wonder Woman believed him, Spidey is from this universe, so he knows better than to take Dr. Doom at his word. So Diana tried to capture the bug in her net, which in this case is a giant lasso that makes you tell the truth. But Spider-Man ended up gaining the advantage by simply turning off the lights and letting his Spidey sense do the work, after dodging the lasso quite a bit, might I add. Spider-Man ended the fight by simply tapping her on her shoulder and basically saying, "See, I could kick right now, but I'm not. I'm one of the good guys." And that was enough for Diana to stand down, apparently. Getting close to the end in number 3, Hulk. Usually when Spidey fights someone stronger or more powerful than himself, he needs to think on his feet and outsmart them in some way. And you think that would be easy with the Hulk, given that he's just a giant brute with anger issues. But actually, that's not how this one played out at all. In True Believers Spider-Man vs. the Hulk number 1, Hulk challenged Spider-Man at a horrible time. At least, a horrible time for the Hulk. Since Spider-Man had just acquired a new set of abilities which increased his strength, speed, and gave him the ability to go airborne without webs. Spider-Man at this point was actually stronger than the Hulk, so he was trying to avoid a fact for lack of causing permanent damage. Unaliving him, if you will. But when Hulk started to endanger nearby kids, Spider-Man punched him and literally sent him into space. Since he was outside Earth's atmosphere, Spider-Man realized that he wasn't coming back down and flew up to help him, bringing him back down to Earth where he could breathe and not, freeze to death. It's pretty hardcore. Penultimately, in at number 2, Superboy. Marvel vs. DC is one of the best crossovers when looking at these lists. The fights from that crossover were decided by votes, so with Spider-Man being the most popular character Marvel has ever released, you can be sure that he'd end up winning against Superboy, despite the potentially unrealistic scenario that caused. However, it was explained away pretty easily when Superboy broke a water tower and flooded the roof they were fighting on. All it took after that was a conveniently placed high voltage box and some crashing to end the fight for Superboy. I don't know if Spider-Man was aware of this vulnerability, but either way, it went how it went. It also feels like I should mention that the Spider-Man fighting Superboy was Ben Reilly, the Spider-Man clone who goes on to become the Scarlet Spider. And DC fans don't seem to like it when you bring up this fight, with multiple users on a certain forum telling someone who mentioned it to jump on a bed of nails, which I have to say, I've heard better insults, come on. Finally, in at number 1, Silver Surfer. Sure, Hulk is strong and Superboy is part Kryptonian, but Silver Surfer is literally a cosmic being, a herald of Galactus. This man is nuts. And while yes, the fight with him may not really have been there overall, Spidey still technically came out on top, and that's what matters. In Silver Surfer number 14, the flying second place Emmy had a crossover encounter with Spider-Man while surfing over the city, and cause plot to make characters fight, a misunderstanding ensued. So Spidey immediately attacked the Silver Surfer. Let's be honest, on a good day, Surfer would usually just obliterate Spider-Man no problem, or just like flick him and he'd be fine. But on this occasion, the Surfer was actually already weak from a previous encounter, and on top of that, he just didn't want to fight. The Silver Surfer repeatedly tried to avoid battling Spider-Man and even saved Spidey from falling off a building, but Spider-Man wouldn't let up, knocking the Surfer off his board and taking the fight to him on the rooftops. Silver Surfer finally just got fed up with the violence and then made a decision to retreat, but first had to save a child who had taken his board. I mean, like, come on, you could have at least given the kid a few minutes. Him saving the kid is what finally clued Spider-Man in that the Surfer was a good guy, but technically, Spidey wins by default. He didn't die, so that's a win to me. That's what matters. And at 10, The Flash. Now, The Flash has fought alternate versions of himself a lot, and I mean a lot. But I think that the most interesting time was when it was him from an alternate future where Wally West had died. And this future Barry's solution was to come back and kill his past self so the timeline of events that caused Wally to die wouldn't happen. Yeah, I still don't understand it either. However, to gain enough speed, Barry has to kill all of his rogues, including Gorilla Grodd, Mirror Master, and Captain Cold, who he just sits with as he dies. It's weird. I also don't get how going on a killing spree helps you gain more speed, but whatever, maybe Reverse Flash did it. He eventually does gain enough speed and runs back in time to try to kill himself. But both the present Barry and a future version of Wally West fight off future Barry, and future Barry gets killed. But before dying, he's able to mutter Thawne in an attempt to explain that Thawne killed his mother. Yeah, gotta love comics, right? They make so much sense. In at 9, Mecha Vibe. I will admit the Flash TV show has gone in some interesting directions recently. However, the most recent season saw Barry lose basically all of his emotions for a time while trying to build an artificial speed force. But this ended up causing Barry to be very logical but also weirdly impulsive, becoming a form of pseudo-villain for a couple episodes. But when choosing to take only Iris out of the Mirrorverse, the team retaliates and tries to stop him. But in the process, Barry absolutely destroys all of them because he literally can predict where a ball will appear before it's thrown. He just puts his hand up and there's a ball that will just bounce in random directions that Cisco throws, and then he doesn't move his hand and catches it. Like, what? Gotta love that speed thinking. And it's not like that would have helped against DeVoe or anything. Gotta love when they introduce new abilities that would have really helped previously, huh? Oh, and that damn copyright neutral lightsaber battle in the finale, seriously? That had to be the most ridiculous bull I've ever seen on this show. I thought Godspeed was gonna pull some sick ass Zeus bull and start grab the lightning and start throwing it, but no, he made a lightning saber. This show, man. And at 8, Green Arrow. Okay, so during the Elseworlds crossover event, Flash and Green Arrow swapped their powers. So Oliver Queen became the Flash and Barry Allen became the Green Arrow. Yet even with that, Barry was in essence still his old self until he started having to take on a darker personality in order to be the Green Arrow. Before doing this, however, he did finally get his revenge on Oliver after around 6 years. In the very first crossover, Flash vs. Arrow, we saw Oliver training Barry on how to case an environment. He did so by placing remote control crossbows in a field and told Barry to catch an arrow. After he did, the remote control crossbows shot Barry in the back. Literally. Barry, however, got his revenge in Elseworlds where he did the same thing to Oliver on Earth 38, when training Oliver on how to use his speed. I don't know how he got the bows there, because it was another Earth, but it still counts. He also beat the Amazo robot after it had gained the abilities of Green Arrow among others, so that certainly counts as well. And at 7, Other Flashes. When Wally goes berserk and starts killing other speedsters, it's gonna be an interesting issue. Yeah, in the Future State storyline, we see some Flashes including Jay Garrick, Barry Allen, and Max Mercury fighting off various thugs with blasters, swords, and futuristic torpedo grenades. But one of the speedsters gets injured and they have to retreat. They later, for some reason, get inside each other's dreams and end up in some psychic plane of existence where Wally ends up finding them somehow. It also seems to be a version of Wally that's also Black Flash, or maybe it's Black Flash disguising, I don't know. Either way, this version of Wally absolutely rips through the entire Flash family, feeding on their psychic forms, and honestly, that's enough for me to put it on this list, so just because I don't want it to happen to me. And at 6, Kid Flash. In season 3 of The Flash, Barry kinda gave up on his responsibilities because he was scared of losing Iris. I get it, the girl you've been pining after for years had finally admitted that she had feelings for you, but then you went and changed the timeline, so losing her would definitely end up sucking. But you don't give all the responsibility of saving her to her little brother, that Godspeed, because you changed the timeline. Damn, season 3 was weird. However, in season 3, episode 12, Barry and Wally have a race to keep Wally's training going. Things seem fairly even until they come to a building that they need to run over. Barry faces through the wall, but since Wally doesn't know how to do that, he has to run over the building. Funny. Wally has to run over a wall. Wall. Either way, Barry ends up winning and Wally complains because he phased. But then Barry responds with the best line of, "What's my name?" Since prior he was mentioning how he was called the fastest man alive. Also, I want to just say that they were betting on this race and Caitlyn bet more on Barry than Iris did. So maybe I should have let Savitar win. Just saying. Halfway through into number 5, Black Lightning. The Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event was probably the biggest, most influential event the Arrowverse ever had, similar to how Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comics was a really big event, with characters from shows that we didn't even know were in the Arrowverse making an appearance, like Doom Patrol, Teen Titans, and even Ezra Miller's Flash. However, one of the most highly anticipated crossovers was Black Lightning, who made his appearance after being pulled to Earth 1 by Pariah when his Earth was destroyed in part 3 of the 5-part crossover. His first meeting with the heroes was an eventful one though, attacking Vibe, Frost, and the Flash at the antimatter cannon, demanding that he be sent home, even though there was no home to be sent home to. After some quick descriptions about what's going on from Pariah and Barry, he calms down. But before he does, he takes a few passes at the Flash, including just throwing lightning at him, which Barry just blocks with some additional lightning. So, pretty sick if you ask me. And for Supergirl. Okay, this is the last of the Arrowverse stuff, I promise, okay? He fights a lot of people in the Arrowverse. The Invasion crossover was the first big crossover the Arrowverse had. They had a couple prior to this, but this was the first one where Supergirl was brought into Earth 1, and since the Legends were having their first season, they were also there as well. However, after discovering that Barry had changed the timeline and made a whole new reality that gave Diggle a son, and killed Cisco's brother, the group basically benched Barry when they were going to save the president from aliens. Yeah, bench the guy who can run at the speed of light. That's a great idea. So since Barry was staying, Oliver stayed back with him. But it's actually a good thing that they did, because the distress signal turned out to be a trap that everyone went to because, you know, they were trying to save the president. However, they turned against Oliver and Barry because they got brainwashed by Dominators. So in an attempt to get the Dominators out of the others' heads, Barry lured Supergirl to a warehouse where he got her really mad enough to break the connection. He got her mad by showing her how much faster he is and that she couldn't even lay a finger on him. I actually find it funny because it's such a childish thing, but it works so well. Getting close to the end in number 3, Batman. Batman is always depicted as a hero who can beat anyone despite not having any powers, and I get why it's appealing to people, because we all want to feel like we can do anything even though we're not a superhero. But the thing is, this whole Batman is the best thing is a load of bull, okay? Take this single frame from the Price storyline, where Flash puts his fist not even a centimeter away from Batman's face and says, "I could hit you 100 times before you even threw one punch." And he is absolutely right. I love this line. I love Batman being put in his place. Not only that, but as Red Death, Barry was also able to beat Batman after being blasted with positive energy. God, that sounds like the show. Barry was able to take control over his body again as Red Death, since Batman was so full of hate and whatnot. Because, you know, Red Death is a combination of Bruce Wayne and Barry when they combined after entering the Speed Force, while Barry was tied to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile. I'm not even kidding. Sounds absolutely ridiculous. Penultimately, in at number 2, Quicksilver. During the Marvel vs. DC crossover comic event, the Flash was pitted against Quicksilver, since he's the Marvel equivalent. However, there are multiple things about these characters that separate them. For instance, Quicksilver's body is always moving quickly, and he has to actually slow himself down in order to talk to people and live like a normal person would, which is why he comes off as short-tempered and easily annoyed, because he's literally slowing down his life for you and can't wait for you to get in the fast lane. However, the Flash and subsequently other DC speedsters only run fast when accessing the Speed Force, so otherwise they're just normal people with high metabolisms. But when pitted against each other, the Flash did understandably come out on top, because while he needs to access the Speed Force to move fast, he's accessing a literal force of nature, so yeah, it makes sense. Finally, in at number 1, Superman. The Flash beats Superman in one of the most iconic moments of all time in comics. The Flash and Superman have faced off on multiple occasions, multiple of which ended in a tie or close to it. But in the panels of Flash Rebirth number 3, we got to see how that was all possible. After all, Barry is accessing a force of nature. When Barry wanted to re-enter the Speed Force after escaping, the Justice League was looking for a way to disconnect Barry from the Speed Force to save his life. But Barry manages to break free and runs off. Superman follows him though, saying that he will find a way to save him and that they can't lose another hero, and that he won't be able to re-enter the Speed Force because he will keep up with him. That they have raced before and Superman even won a couple times. But that's when Barry looks at him super smugly and says, "Those were for charity, Clark." And then boom! The man runs insanely fast and leaves Superman in his dust. I love this moment. It settled the debate once and for all. Who's faster? The Flash, by far. I love it. Best moment in all of comics, okay? Well, I mean, after the introduction of Green Arrow's son, Connor.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Nightwing. Coming from the Court of Owls storyline where a body was found with a message. Bruce Wayne will die tomorrow. That's what it said, written right there on the wall. Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets style. It's so mysterious, okay. Pretty concerning warning, but when Batman finds Dick Grayson's DNA under the victim's fingernail, he has even more questions. It's later revealed that William Cobb is the great-grandfather of Dick Grayson. Spoilers right off the hop. But Batman is trying to piece together this mystery alone. He's not sharing all these details, and Dick is obviously upset. He's yelling at Bruce, he's demanding to shed more light on this fact that he just dropped on him. Bruce interrupts him with a left hook to the jaw, knocking Nightwing down. He did this simply to check one of Nightwing's teeth for an owl logo. Now, to be fair, he did have the owl in his tooth. Bruce was right. Dick was supposed to be a Talon growing up, but I'm pretty sure there's other ways to check a tooth here. I mean, you have tech that can see through cars. I don't know, just tell him to lean back. Be like, what's that? And scan his mouth. That's it. Although a surprise bat punch works too. That clearly works as well. Number 9, The Incredible Hulk. When DC and Marvel combine powers, it's an odd but beautiful time. In DC's special series issue 27 titled The Monster and the Madman, Angry Orphan Bruce vs. Angrier Orphan Bruce. Who comes out on top? Well, given the title of this list, you already know what happens, but how? That's the question. Bruce Banner was working at a division of Wayne Research. He was developing a gamma gun, said to cure diseases, so Banner was hoping he could fix his mean green problem while at work. Sounds like a plan. But when the Joker comes in and steals the gamma gun, Bruce goes green, makes a mess, and in turn, Batman shows up to save the day. You can't just punch the Hulk until he goes to sleep this time around. You won't even get close. So Batman, in fact, does get close, a little too close for comfort, as his spine was seconds away from snapping like a pencil. So Batman used a chemical that would knock the beast out. Thing is, the Hulk can hold his breath for a long time, so in order for him to inhale, Batman had to kick him right in the stomach, and then down goes the Green Goliath. And before we continue on with this list, you guys know the drill. If you want to go and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us out a lot at this channel, and obviously we like throwing all that nerdy content back, so it's a nice circle of love. Hit that thumbs up. Thank you. Back to the list. Number 8, Wonder Woman. Rich orphan vs. daughter of Zeus. This one is shocking, I'll admit. Coming from Batman Confidential issue 53, Batman is facing the team, and right from the get-go, trying not to say right off the bat, he says the woman is the most powerful. Right on. The woman being Wonder Woman. He decides he has to take her down first, but after his knuckles shatter, Bruce realizes it might be a little harder than he thinks. She still needs to breathe though, so there is hope. Batman beats her without any heavy metal knight armor, anything like that, and then after he gets Superman's powers, he takes out the entire team again. All these superhumans, it's always air. It's always air that's the weakness. You just gotta knock the wind out of them and then they're good. Like every kid in the playground, when they get winded, they're like, and then have to go home. Number 7, Green Arrow. Whenever Batman breaks his one rule, it's pretty alarming. He did it a few times in the early comics. I mean, he pushed a guy into acid, he threw another guy into a knife, and then he broke a dude's neck with one kick. It was pretty intense, but nothing comes close to the time that Batman beat Green Arrow half to death just for Superman's birthday. Yeah, hear this one out. This takes place in Superman and Batman's Absolute Power storyline. It takes place in an alternate timeline where Superman and Batman were raised as evil rulers instead of the protectors that they are now. It's a stressful but pretty awesome time, I gotta admit. They're hunting down Green Arrow, and the fight, as you would guess, doesn't last too long. Archer almost gets Superman as well. He comes very close. Clark catches the arrow, and then moments later, kryptonite explodes out of it. The classic Loki Hawkeye trick. It's good. Always works. Batman gets upset here. He says, hey, if you just hurt him, I'll kill you. So that's pretty crazy for Bruce. That's like 0 to 100 for Bruce Wayne. They brawl it out a bit, and then when Archer goes down, Bruce says, get up, because he wants more. At that point, I would my jeans. That's crazy. He's so angry. Now, this is when Superman flies in and turns Archer into dust with his laser vision. He's telling Green Arrow's corpse to obey or die, so it's very intense. Batman did all the heavy lifting here, and it's even more twisted when you remember that he gave Archer up to Superman as a birthday present. Number 6, the Ninja Turtles. Batman beating up the Foot Clan and coming face to face with Shredder is pretty awesome. But when he meets the Turtles, he has no idea what exactly he's facing. He's like, are these good guys or bad guys? I'm very confused. All he sees are giant moody turtle monsters with weapons, just like eating pizza. So of course, a brawl goes down. It also doesn't help that the Turtles were breaking and entering into a pizza joint. Like, you're literally breaking the law. You're a bad guy. Batman thinks these guys are villains, so he takes them on all at the same time. He impressed the Turtles while doing so, and it takes Master Splinter's arrival just to calm things down. But even then, Batman's like, a rat? No sweat, I'll fight you too. Batman vs. Ratman, let's do it. He doesn't beat up Splinter, don't worry, because Splinter makes a run for it, which is crazy. The fact that Splinter and the Turtles had to run away from Bruce Wayne, that's awesome. We had to include it on this list. Until next time, Batman, just eating pizza. Number 5, The Punisher. I would pay thousands of dollars to see this on screen. No problem, debit, boop. Punisher Batman Deadly Nights, written by Chuck Dixon. We get to see John Romita Jr. draw Batman during his 37 years at Marvel Comics, which is amazing. So both of these heroes were on the same side, more or less. They wanted bad guys off the street, but the way that Frank Castle does that, by spraying, a plethora of bullets, Batman likes to break an arm or two, so they're a little bit different. So they get into a disagreement over Batman's one rule, and Frank is moments away from taking out the Joker, and then Batman intervenes and saves the Joker's life, which is kind of crazy. Batman lets Frank connect one hit to the face because he was frustrated, but one is all he'll get tonight. Number 4, Superman. One of the biggest movies of 2016. It's been teased since I Am Legend in the very background. Batman vs Superman, Son of Krypton vs Bat of Gotham. Who will come out on top? Well, the general audience wasn't a big fan of this outcome, but Bruce Wayne took this one. Bruce almost ended the God too, but luckily he was reminded of his mother and therefore his own mortality, so he didn't go through with that execution. In Batman vs Superman, I mean, sure, Bruce had kryptonite, but Superman easily could have punched him into vapor. I wasn't too happy with this win, but after accumulating over $870 million in the box office, we figured it was worth a Martha mention. In the comics too, Batman has come out on top. In Injustice Year 5, Batman beats Superman in a back alley, and of course in The Dark Knight Returns, Bruce gets pretty close to ending the Son of Krypton. Number 3, Azrael. Right after the 1993 Nightfall storyline when Batman got wrecked by Bane, his back was broken. He decided to pass the Batman mantle to not Dick Grayson, no, instead he chose Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael. This guy is a crazy substitute. I mean, his run as Batman wasn't the same at all. Batman wasn't nearly as violent as Azrael. He's also just messy and irresponsible the way he handles things. Not really a great look for Gotham, but we have to admit he is a tad impressive because he did beat Bane with his, advanced Autobot looking suit. So he did a good job on paper. He was a decent successor, but not a permanent one. Once Bruce recovered, he had to physically force Azbat to leave the position. He got too cozy in the crime fighting life, but you know what? I don't blame him. But yeah, as far as being Batman, even the style changes were drastic. He had claws. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of claws. If someone was saving my life from a crime and he had claws looking like that, I would think I'm in more trouble. Number 2, Green Lantern. This one comes from Justice League issue 5. Fans refer to it simply as the Punch. At this time in comics, Batman was about to become the leader of the Justice League International, and Guy Gardner doesn't really share the same enthusiasm as the rest of the team. For more than one issue, he makes it very clear that he doesn't want Batman to run the show, although Batman was clearly a better fit for the role. Whatever, people get jealous. Guy was being sour, he was being a sour guy, so he challenged Batman to a fight without the use of his power ring. Just one human to another. Batman was already a human before, so it's gonna get messy. Batman easily knocked him down, and you guessed it, he did so with one punch. Yeah, of course, he's Batman, and without the ring, you're literally just a guy. Literally a guy. Blue Beetle started shouting one punch over and over again. He was hyped up, and readers were for sure doing the same. I know I was. And finally, number 1, the Justice League. One of the more impressive defeats comes from the Tower of Babel storyline that began back in JLA issue 43. It's a 4-parter written by Mark Waid, where Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins strike against every member of the Justice League using their personal lives and vulnerabilities. How does one get all this information? Well, it's all thanks to Batman and his trust issues. See, Bruce was keeping a hidden file that exposed all the strengths and weaknesses of the JLA. He made this file just in case any of them were to go rogue. So this man just gave away revenge recipes. Here you go, here's the password, enjoy. Batman figured all these out, so he wrote them down. Okay, so red kryptonite to use on Superman, okay. Nanites to trap Wonder Woman in a virtual battle with herself. A post-hypnotic suggestion would make the Green Lantern will himself into blindness. He has a Vibra bullet as well that would send the Flash into light speed seizures, and a magnesium virus would cause Martian Manhunter's skin to burst into flames when he's exposed to air. Also, Scarecrow's fear toxin would make Aquaman afraid of water, and Plastic Man, well, you just freeze him and flick him. Some blame Ra's al Ghul, but I blame the guy who had a dirty file of secrets. I don't know. I don't trust rich orphans anymore. That's my thing. I'm for sure going through all my friends' phones now.
Coming in number 10, we've got Wolverine. Say it isn't so. The Hulk and Wolverine never would fight. They're both so friendly and easy to get along with. I almost had you for a second, didn't I? Now, these two are almost contractually obliged to duke it out from time to time now, aren't they? Going way back to the era before Wolverine was even an official X-Men, this duo would fight over just about anything, and it really could go either way. Like, Wolverine has beaten the Hulk before, albeit in the grim dark universe of Old Man Logan, but in most cases, James Howlett loses out to the Hulk. Sure, he's technically invincible and will always bounce back in one way or another, well, most of the time. There's no dealing with brute force that the Hulk has to to offer. Way back before Wolverine was even introduced in X-Men, the two fought, with the Hulk refusing to back down. Then there's the time that the Hulk returned from space looking to exact some revenge on those who would send him out there. Wolverine definitely had his butt kicked this time in particular. And who could forget the legendary rip and tear fest that was Hulk versus Wolverine atop a mountain in Tibet. God, Hulk really let him have it that time, didn't he? Limbs were removed and tossed to different mountaintops, and legs were threatened to be eaten. Not a good look for our pal Wolverine now, is it? But what can you do? Beating the Hulk isn't something most folks even have a chance at. Coming at number 9, we've got Spider-Man. A cursory Google search will reward you with a plethora of insane clickbait homebrew animations, pitting Spider-Man against the Hulk in the lowest resolution possible. Ah, the internet. Is there no end to your ridiculous cash grabs? Remember the era of Spider-Man Elsa videos? What a time to be alive. However, the bouts between Spider-Man and Hulk don't end at cheesy animations and gaming channels. There are indeed a few fights between the two in official Marvel stories. Cool, popular, and versatile as Spider-Man is, there really isn't a way for him to beat the Brute in head-to-head combat. He's got super strength and spidey senses, but that's not enough to take out a towering monster of flesh and gamma radiation. He's used his smarts to great effect in the past, putting other heroes' technology and strategies to use and defeating overpowered opponents. There are instances of Spider-Man outmaneuvering Hulk too. And there was also the time that he had some godly cosmic powers, but that's not exactly fair, is it? However, in the end, our green pal will likely come out on top of any fight between these two. Most times, Spidey would be best just to hide out until the Hulk leads. If he's less lucky, he'll get walloped and pass out, which has happened a couple times. The Hulk is pretty strong. Coming at number 8, we've got Iron Man. Wait, aren't these guys both founding Avengers? Why would they ever have to fight? Well, that's the thing, there's always a reason or two. They've got big, science-centered brains and plenty of power for sure. However, Tony Stark tends to get on people's nerves and also makes a bunch of decisions without consulting others. The Hulk does not take well to this, not one bit. So of course the guy with the craziest technology is going to have to take on the sheer physical might of a creature that thrives on anger. It's just gotta happen. And fight they do, but here's the thing. It's not often that Iron Man scores a decisive victory or even a victory at all. No matter how powerful and advanced he makes his weaponry, no matter how far ahead he plans to fight the Hulk, he comes with some inherent limits. His tech will eventually run out of juice, get damaged, or reach a predetermined limit. You can't really make stuff push too far past the limits of the materials it's made of. Hulk, on the other hand, will always be getting angrier and therefore stronger. He's like a perpetual motion machine of rage and fury. So even with the Hulkbuster suits, darts to sap strength, and a bevy of other interesting anti-Hulk technology, eventually this will all run out, leaving the Hulk to do what he will. It's happened time and time again, muscle beats machinery in this case. There's that time that Stark sent Hulk off into the universe, I guess, but that resulted in World War Hulk, which wasn't very fun for anyone on planet Earth. Whoops. Coming in at number 7, She-Hulk. Speaking of World War Hulk, funny how that works, right? One would think that Hulk loves his cousin too much to fight her. They have a long, strong history together, essentially treating each other as siblings, and don't often get mad with each other anyways, despite the anger inherent in their powers. Hell, Bruce Banner is the reason that She-Hulk is the way she is. After an emergency blood transfusion, Jennifer Walters is endowed with a less intense version of Bruce Banner's condition, like a watered down Hulk. Still plenty powerful and possibly the strongest woman in Marvel, but she's not quite a match for Bruce's monster. However, like I was saying before, why would they ever fight? They're family. Well, World War Hulk changed the way the Hulk saw the world. Totally fueled by anger and revenge, he came back to Earth a changed being. And coming across his cousin, he felt no remorse in slamming her so hard into the ground that the Earth around her was turned into a crater. Holy smokes, Hulk, no mercy, eh? Coming in number 6, we've got Loki. I feel like this moment cemented the Avengers as the premier attraction in Marvel's budding cinematic universe. Back before we had any confirmation of Infinity Stones or gauntlets, we had the Tesseract. Loki, god of mischief and brother to the mighty Thor, used this object to cause all sorts of mayhem. This wasn't his only trick, but it worked particularly well. Being a god, Loki was pretty cocky though. What could Earth's heroes do to stop me, he thought. Well, the Hulk had something to say about that. He tossed the so-called puny god around like a child with a doll having a temper tantrum. Got some chuckles, inspired some memes, the works. However, this little fight had been hotly contested. Loki, again, a literal god, likely wouldn't have been hurt by this interaction at all. Like, would the Hulk have even had an effect on him? Stranger things have happened for sure. This moment might have just been played for laughs to ensure an audience hit, but hey, Hulk did indeed beat the snot out of Loki in this particular instance. Coming in number 5, we've got The Thing. Strong arm versus strong arm. A classic trope, a legendary fight. Other than Wolverine, I'd say The Thing is one of the Hulk's most lasting hero opponents. Both considered immortal, unbeatable, impossible to damage, this is a heavyweight bout like no other. However, the Hulk definitely takes precedence when he's in revenge mode. So when he wanted to go and find and fight the Avengers, the Fantastic Four stepped in. Benjamin Grimm wanted a piece of the gamma-saturated super, so the two decided to throw down on their own. After an exchange of massive blows, eventually the Thing did drop. It's gotta hurt fighting the Hulk, but at least he can take a hit. Coming in number 4, the Avengers. Yes, all of them. That's the thing, this seems to happen quite often. Nobody really knows how to deal with the Hulk, and this is an issue that rears its ugly head quite often. Even though he is often part of the group himself, if things go a little sideways, it's not unlike the Hulk to decide to go solo after working out some frustration. And by working out frustration, I do mean slapping his former comrades around. He can do that no problem too, the Hulk is strong. Why else would Tony Stark constantly be dreaming up contingency plans related to the bulky boy? But yeah, the Avengers don't often beat Hulk if they have to take him on. Usually it's making him turn back into Bruce Banner or getting him as far away from the fight as possible, and when that doesn't work, the Hulk beats folks down and leaves. Simple as that. Coming in number 3, we've got Doctor Strange. You would think that the Sorcerer Supreme would be able to deal with a meathead no problem, a spell or two, and the problem's done with. However, again, during World War Hulk, the rage proved to be a little too much. Holy moly, Hulk, calm down, why don't ya? Strange often sends Hulk to different dimensions or far away if it looks like things are getting too rough. In this fight, he decides to channel a universe-destroying demon to give him that upper hand. It seems to be working at first, but as is the case with many fights involving last-ditch efforts against the Hulk, the new powers can only last so long. When Strange starts to lose control of this demonic power, the Hulk is just getting angrier, and when Hulk gets mad, he gets strong. With this in mind, I'm sure you can guess what happens next. Doctor Strange, unconscious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Silver Surfer. No, not Silver Surfer, Herald of Galactus, wielder of powers beyond mortal understanding. But it's true, Hulk did indeed take out this incredible hero, although it was under some very unique circumstances. Some very zombie circumstances, in fact. Showing up just in time to see the world totally gripped by the zombie apocalypse, he does his best to help out. The number of heroes attempting to eat him proves to be too much though, and he's overwhelmed before the Hulk arrives. Using his massive size and strength to push through the crowd, Hulk consumes Silver Surfer, gaining a bit of his power cosmic along the way. Yikes. And finally at number 1, we've got Sentry. Sentry should be Earth's strongest warrior. After being imbued with the powers of a super soldier serum hundreds of thousands of times stronger than the original, he became incredibly powerful. Almost too powerful if you ask me. Thing is, this kind of strength is only barely enough to handle the Hulk. When the Hulk and his Warbound came to Earth, Sentry was there to fight him. However, they essentially fought each other to a standstill, with each reverting back to their human form. But even after all that, Bruce Banner gets the last hit in. Classic. Fighting till the very end. Sheesh. Who would have guessed that Hulk had the capacity to end all sorts of other superheroes? You gotta wonder how all these uber people feel when faced with a being so clearly stronger than themselves.